So now we'll stay in a meditative mode. As we often do we've done in these classes, we'll shift our attention now. So we get a little bit of mindfulness of breathing. And now we'll spend a few minutes meditating on bodhicitta. So remember that all bodhicitta meditation begins with equanimity. There are many meditations on equanimity, but a simple way to do it is just to spend a few minutes focusing on how everyone is the same in wanting happiness and not to suffer. Right? People, animals, other kinds of sentient beings, right, are the same as each other and the same as oneself in wanting not to suffer, wanting to be happy, to be safe, to be well. Also, Kappa advises, right? It's good to think of, while that's true of all beings, right? To affect one's own mind, it's really useful to bring up examples, right? Like, so somebody you uh, are deeply attached to, somebody you don't care at all about, and somebody you dislike. Right? You can imagine those three people in front of you. As you do that, let's do that now. So pick one example of a person in each category, right? Somebody you're attached to, somebody you barely notice, who you don't, honestly, if you're honest with yourself, you actually, in real life, in real moment, when you barely notice them. And then somebody who, when you just see their image, you immediately dislike them. And so think of those three people, and then we meditate, right? They're all exactly the same as each other and as me. I'm wanting to be happy, I'm wanting to not suffer. Each of them has their own fears, their own hopes, their own worries. They feel them just as deeply as I do. And we can just keep going, right? So still thinking of those beings, right, and that they represent all beings. Then also we can recognize, right, if I exclusively or mainly only focus on my welfare, right, if I only am self-centered, and if those others are also self-centered, right, then actually we create like difficult, sometimes even hellish circumstances with each other. You can actually see that, right? So in other words, if I choose to continue with a kind of self-centered, selfish, self exclusively or mostly self-focused attitude, right, and others do, you can actually see quite clearly, right, that gives rise then, right, to competition, to arrogance, to jealousy, to hatred, to anger, to grasping. Right? And actually, the further we go into that direction of self-centeredness, we can, like the extreme, right? Then we kill each other. We can kill. We end up killing somebody or hating them. All of that comes from the self-centered attitude. The idea is that if you really start to notice that, right, that if I and these others, if we choose to live in that self-centered way, right, with an inner focus and selfishness, you start to feel it's actually like horrifying. And it's not just like a moralistic point, right? You actually have to, idea here in this meditation is you have to see it for yourself, right? When we interact with each other in those self-centered ways, right? We make war. We turn each other into like refugees. Or at best, we have a kind of cold war. Even with the person who I am attached to. Right? If I relate to them in a self-centered, primarily self-centered way, right? Actually, we make each other's lives, I make their life. And, if they relate to me that way, if we both are doing that, our lives become claustrophobic, uptight, tense. All the mental afflictions arise from that kind of attitude. And there's never any real peace. Never any real peace in my mind. Never any real interpersonal peace. Never any real peace in the world. The actual experience of real peace and the self-centered attitude are like mutually exclusive. By contrast, right, the mind of love that cherishes others. You check your own experience, but in this meditation, you analyze that or you explore that. Right? That with that open-hearted mind of loving kindness that cherishes others, it automatically gives a kind of peace. Right? In the moment you start to have that inner attitude, your own mind gets peace, it gets calm, gets content. And then also, like, you give others peace through that mind of love. You give them space to be themselves. And whether it's the person you're attached to or the person you don't like, right? When you start to relate to them through loving kindness, actually they get more peace, you get more peace. The mental afflictions decrease. And positive actions are just a natural outflow of love, aren't they? You said earlier, at the extreme of selfishness, we create hell. And actually, at the extreme of love, we create Pure Land or paradise. Mm. Like when, on the level of a home, right? In your home, if people are being loving, if you're being loving, if you're each being loving to the other, then the home feels wonderful. Whether it's between, and that kind of relationship right, between two people, that's a wonderful experience. When it's a group of people, it's a wonderful experience. So we decide, I dedicate myself to love. I dedicate myself to compassion. And I choose love. I choose compassion. Even if they're difficult to cultivate because of my habituation previously with selfishness, that's okay, right? That's the meaningful life. So when I come across people I don't barely notice, I'll cultivate love for them. When annoying enemies come to mind, I'll cultivate love for them. When I grasp at somebody and want something from them, I'll pause and cultivate love for that person. I'll strive to relate to them in a loving way. We can expand it out. So my choice then is to cultivate love and compassion for all beings, everywhere. For everyone on this Zoom call, everyone in my neighborhood, everyone in the DC region, everyone on this continent, everyone in this hemisphere, all the beings on this planet. All the beings in the universe. And so I must achieve, and this concludes with, right, this aspiration. May I become a Buddha to be of ultimate benefit to all those beings. To like become the ultimate expression of loving compassion. That's the purpose of my life. Mhm. And with that kind of bodhicitta in mind, then we'll do the refuge of the verse of refuge in bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. To the merits of giving and the other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. To the merits of giving and the other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. To the merits of giving and the other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. This is the last, right, in the series on the Heart Sutra. And I mentioned before, first, actually, a couple of quick things about that. One is, if, most of you who are on this call, I don't know if I can't keep track, I haven't kept close track, but for people who are, like, in general, FPMT suggests or requests that, if, like, since this is part of the basic program, FPMT's basic program, this text, like to sort of give people credit or something like that. So if you've done most of the classes, I guess best thing is maybe people can send me an email and I'll make a list. And then, I have to figure out, like, I was going to sort of print up and give in person after the Lam Rim class, like certificates, but then of course the pandemic hit and we weren't meeting in person. But I'll check with FPMT if there's a way to do those as a PDF. I'm not sure, so I'll look into that. And so, but I guess, so maybe people can email me if you've done like at least more than half the classes. Then email me and I'll make a list of everybody. So at least we have a list, and at some point we can then send people. I'll find out from FPMT the best way to send that, and also make sure people get. I haven't looked into that, but. Well, Paul, you asked me about that. I'll look into it. How to make sure that FPMT knows that people have completed these things. So I'm sometimes not good at the administrative stuff, but I'll do that. And then I had also mentioned, I'll send out to Gabe. Gabe's not here. I'll send Gabe an email. I was scheduling a Vajrayogini event in January, but now I'll go ahead and also, my email. That's a good point. I'll put it on the chat right now so that I don't forget, because you're right. If I don't put that, then. Okay, yeah, my email's on there in case people don't have it. Yeah, that's the best email to use for me. Let's see. So we just put up on the website for people with the Vajrayogini initiation. We put up an event about that in January. But now I'll send Gabe this week. I'll send a schedule starting in January of classes on tenets. And I'll just say, I don't want to dwell on tenets because we're focusing on the Heart Sutra, but I'll just say one quick thing, which is my plan in the class on tenets. I mean, there's a text that FPMT uses. It teaches the four main philosophical tenet systems of Buddhism. And so we'll go through those and explain what they are. But one thing I'm kind of interested in, so I think we'll try to focus on a little bit, is not just understand. I mean, obviously, you have to understand them intellectually, but that then to meditate a little bit from each perspective. Does that make sense? Because those schools are not just intellectual. I mean, they are intellectual in the sense that you have to think about them, but that's not their intent, right? They're intended to transform a person. And so my hope for that series of classes is that it won't be exclusively an intellectual exercise, although there will be some of that, but to actually sort of explore what's it like if you try to look at yourself from the perspective of each of those schools and of your world, what happens, right? Because they're designed to kind of help a person transform. And I've said this before, like the Heart Sutras from the Prasangika Madhyamaka perspective, which is the most subtle. And I was thinking about this, like in the Gelugpa tradition in general, in Tibetan Buddhism, you try to understand the Prasangika perspective because it's considered the most exalted. But then when it comes to actually transforming yourself, you also have to see like, well, I don't know what it is, like, in any given circumstance, what works? And there are times where, in my experience, like, I mean, I love the Prasangika Madhyamaka perspective, but there are times where, like, if my mind is too gross, it's not going to, while it's still the ultimately correct perspective, that doesn't mean I can apply it, if that makes sense. Because if my mind's in a kind of agitated state, and that's a very subtle, exalted view, even if the view is correct, the person may not be correct, if that makes sense, and the correct person to apply that view. So there are reasons why, and I'm just sort of going off on a tangent here, but I'll just say it very briefly. There's a reason why even like, it's funny, even like a Geshe, right? The Geshe studies in the Gelugpa, right? Where they go and study for like 20 years, these topics. I mean, they spend a number of years on Madhyamaka, but most of the other 10, right? That when they study Abhidharma for years, that's from mostly a Satantrika perspective. Some of those texts are from mind only perspective, right? And then they study, even when they study the Abhisamaya Alamkara, they don't study it they study it from a Svatantrika Madhyamaka view, not a Prasangika. So my point is that even the monks don't always only study Prasangika perspective, because there's use in studying those other tenets and practicing those. They help people progress on their practice. So I hope we can look at it from in that way. So it's not just an intellectual exercise, but actually a way of looking at what do those schools imply about the nature of life and people, and how do you apply that to your life when you're living it and you're faced with something difficult. And then you can kind of see where there are times where one approach is more useful and times where another approach may be more useful on a practical level. Anyway, so that's an aside though. But then coming back, so the goal today is we'll do is to do a briefer guru yoga, just a brief, because Lama Zopa Rinpoche suggests that before, and then to meditate. What I'd like to do is go really slowly through the Heart Sutra this time. But maybe I'll just pause. Before we do that, because I don't know if there'll be time at the end, any questions or comments before we, last time I don't think there was time, so I didn't want to skip that. And don't need to be, but if there are, I wanted to give a moment. So does anybody have any comments or questions before we start the meditating a little bit? No? Okay. So so we'll do a briefer Guru Yoga this time, because I think since it's the final one of the Heart Sutra, really we'll pause numerous times as we go through the Heart Sutra. That's the plan or the idea. But anyway, okay. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche suggests first beginning with a little bit of he just says to begin with Guru Yoga. We'll do it briefly. And so like last time, we'll just do a simplified version. If we were in person, we could do like this text together, but it seems quite difficult on Zoom. I don't know, it doesn't seem convenient, so we'll just do it kind of informal. So there are many ways, there are countless Guru Yoga texts actually in Tibetan Buddhism. I think there's literally you couldn't count them, but within those there are different types. And so anyway, here we're just going to do a simple. So there's something which they call the condensed jewel tradition, and that's where you just visualize one being, one, and they embody all your gurus, all your lamas, all your teachers, And so you can actually, so let's do it this way today, actually. You can visualize, let's visualize Prajnaparamita. Right? Oh, that seems quite nice, right? So the guru now, your teacher, teachers, lamas, gurus, whoever they may be, right? They take the form of Prajnaparamita. Right? So she's often depicted as kind of golden yellow in color with 4 arms. And so we can visualize her in front of us, right? We've been studying the Prajnaparamita. But you think, okay, so this is the right. Prajnaparamita is the embodiment of all my gurus, because actually the ultimate guru is the mind of Prajnaparamita, right? The mind with bodhicitta that realizes emptiness. And that is the nature of the Dalai Lama. That's the nature of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's the nature of Gyume Khyentse Rinpoche. Of any teacher, actually, any fully qualified teacher like that. So here, all your lamas take the form of Prajnaparamita. Right, and you remember, right? First of all, like, so that sort of visualize golden colored goddess, but yellowish goddess, but you think first of all that she is the emanation, or of all my teachers, and in particular, right, the ultimate teacher, which is the mind of Prajnaparamita, right? The mind of bodhicitta realizing emptiness. And then, so the first of the 7 limbs is we prostrate. Right? So you can actually put your hands in the gesture of prostration and think, with countless bodies, I prostrate to Prajnaparamita, the Guru, Prajnaparamita. This last time also, the ultimate meaning of the prostration, right, is aspiring to become what you prostrate to. And actually, even when you make the mudra, right, like in Tibetan, chak, in Sanskrit, it's mudra. Khyentse Rinpoche pointed out, he said, the ultimate mudra is Mahamudra, right? The great mudra, which is Prajnaparamita, actually. So even as you make this physical hand gesture and you think of prostrating, what it really means is I aspire to that state of the great mudra, the Mahamudra, Prajnaparamita, right? To the realization of the nature of reality. So then you're happy to prostrate in that sense, right? Prostration is not just an empty ritual, it's an expression of your deep aspiration to see reality as it is, out of love and compassion. And then we visualize, and the next of the 7 limbs is to make offerings. So actually the best of all offerings, right, is practice. And so you can think, I offer my practice to you, Guru Prajnaparamita. My practice of love, my practice of compassion, my practice of studying the Dharma, my practice of contemplating and meditating on the Dharma. I offer all of that to you. And you can visualize other offerings, right? Jewels and, lakes and flowers and trees and so on. We can also think, right, to Prajnaparamita, the wisdom, the great compassionate wisdom realizing reality. You can also think, I offer myself to you. Right? When Milarepa had nothing else to offer, he offered himself. And what could be better, actually, than offering yourself to bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing reality? So I offer my body, speech, and mind to that ultimate guru. And the third limb we confess. Right? So in our own, in your mind, like looking at Guru Prajnaparamita, we recognize, of course, as a samsaric being, of course I've made many mistakes in this life and countless past lives. And we generate a sense of regret. Right? Like, I want to be better. I'm striving to be better, but of course I've made mistakes. I've done things that harmed others and harmed myself. I've done all kinds of non-virtuous actions. And so today I recognize that I regret them because they cause harm to myself and others. And I confess them to purify them. And through my practice of the Heart Sutra, may they be purified. I won't repeat those actions. If I can, I'll stop completely. If I can't stop them, if there are things that are very habitual, then I'll decrease them or do them less or not do them for a period of time. Gradually try to eliminate them. And so with this sense of intelligent regret, I'm practicing the Heart Sutra practice in order to purify my mind, purify my karma. And so Prajnaparamita smiles, right, and says to you, that's excellent. Today you're purified. Meditation on emptiness is the ultimate purification. So it's excellent to generate regret. It's excellent to meditate on emptiness. Prajnaparamita sees your Buddha nature, accepts you, loves you. And encourages you, to continue this practice. And then the next limb is rejoicing. And so since we're doing the Heart Sutra, let's take a moment to rejoice first of all. Actually, the Heart Sutra, we can rejoice in people all over the planet who have and do and will recite and practice the Heart Sutra. Right? People all over, first of all, now, in America and Europe, people recite and practice it. Of course, Tibetans in Tibet and India, Indian people, right? And then throughout China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, throughout all those kind of countries, Mongolia, Bhutan, right? So, and also in Russia, other places. So like all around the planet, there are people practicing the Heart Sutra. In South America too, I've heard it in Spanish. So anyway, all over the globe, there are people practicing, meditating on or reciting the Heart Sutra. So we rejoice. And we can rejoice also in the Heart Sutra itself, right? In Avalokiteshvara's teaching, in the Buddha's great samadhi, in Shariputra's question. We can also rejoice in our own and each other's efforts to study the sutra together. We've all done this sincerely, so it's good to rejoice. By rejoicing in others and our own good karma, it increases the virtue, increases the positive karmic potential. And we can rejoice also in all the beings who have gained the direct realization of the meaning of the Heart Sutra. Right? So all those bodhisattvas who achieve the path of seeing, who have abided on and do abide in the bhumis, the grounds of the bodhisattvas, who have that yogic direct perception in their inner meditation on emptiness. And of all the Buddhas, right, who have realized the resultants, Prajnaparamita, who teach the Prajnaparamita and who became Buddhas by way of the Prajnaparamita. The next limb is requesting, right, to turn the wheel of Dharma. So here, visualizing all of our gurus in the form of Prajnaparamita. We can request, right, them, may you turn the wheel of Dharma. Right, for myself and for others, like, may you rain down the rain of Dharma, right, from the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom. In particular, right, we can request, may you teach, like, first of all, the implicit meaning of the Prajnaparamita sutras, right? So, like, the paths and the grounds and the methods of progressing on the path of the bodhisattvas, paths of the bodhisattvas. And then also the explicit meaning of the Prajnaparamita sutras, right? Emptiness. May you teach the extensive teachings, the profound teachings, right? All those teachings that come down through, like, the profound emptiness view that comes through Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Buddhapalada, Chandrakirti, Shantideva. May you teach the vast conduct of the bodhisattvas as it comes down through Maitreya, Asanga, Vasubandhu, Haribhadra, down through Atisha and so on. May you teach the meanings of the sutras and the tantras for all beings so that we may all achieve enlightenment. And then we ask our teachers to remain long, right, to live long. Briefly think of each of your own teachers, right, lamas, who's alive, if they're alive, each one who's still living, and you request, may you live long. And then also, other valid teachers for other people, other people's teachers and so on. May they also live long. And then the last of the 7 limbs is dedication. Right? So we created a lot of virtuous karma by these practices already. And, through this whole class series and then through the practices so far today. So we dedicate all of that. In particular, here we can dedicate it, like, may we ourselves and all other beings realize the meaning of Prajnaparamita. The ultimate reality. The nature of our own mind. And through these merits, may I and all others, right, come under the influence of bodhicitta and realize the ultimate view. And then you request, right, like Prajnaparamita, your guru in front of you, please bless me, right, to be able to realize that. Please bless me to be able to realize, what you yourself embody and have realized. The view of emptiness. Ultimate Prajnaparamita. Imagine that your guru, Prajnaparamita, is pleased with that. Imagine that Prajnaparamita sends down into you like 5 colored light rays and nectar. It's white, yellow, blue, red, and green. Totally blissful in nature. Yeah. Translucent and with luminance. And that nectar light totally fills your body from the bottom of your body, just all the way to the top, totally filling all like your limbs, your torso, even your head. The five colored like rainbow blessing light nectar. So your body itself becomes like a rainbow, translucent, multicolored. And then like Lama Prajnaparamita herself dissolves into light, comes to the crown of your head, and comes down to your heart, blessing you. And just take a moment, right, to meditate now on that kind of guru yoga. Your mind, the mind of the guru are mixed. Well, then, like I said, we'll go through the Heart Sutra just once now. But we'll pause frequently to kind of contemplate and meditate. Um, so I'll just read the first paragraph, and then we'll pause just to meditate on the scene itself, or imagine the scene itself. So it starts: the Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, Arya Bhagavati Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on Mass of Vultures Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Let's actually pause there as the initial point. Let's just imagine that scene, right? So, just let your mind kind of imagine that for a moment, right? So, it's Rajagriha, which is outside of Bodh Gaya, not too far from where the Buddha achieved his enlightenment, right? Atop this mountain, Massive Vultures Mountain. And so you imagine the scene, right? Like that's what this is setting up. So you imagine, right, that there's the Buddha, right, in meditative concentration, right? So the Buddha, beautiful golden Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, and he's in this state, right, of silent meditation. But you can imagine, right, this is what the sutra is implying, right? He's in this state called what? Profound perception. Right? But everyone around can, what's the word, like, experiences the sort of altered state, you could almost call it, right? The energy of his presence, of his concentration there. And then, and then you see, right, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas there, right, along with many other Bodhisattvas. And then Shariputra is there, along with many other monks. Monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas, it says. So, so you can imagine this scene. Right? It's outdoors, right? So outdoors on a mountaintop, so there's the sky. Open blue sky. Actually, a kind of vast panorama there. And this is the place, actually, right? This place on Maspultra's mountain in Rajagriha is the place where the Buddha taught all the Prajnaparamita sutras. So this sutra and all the other Prajnaparamita sutras were taught in this place. So these are the main, right? There's this great, large number of bodhisattvas, large number of monks. Right? And then the main figures of the sutra, right, are the Buddha himself, Avalokiteshvara, and Shariputra. And just pausing long enough to imagine like the sort of wonderful, kind of awe-inspiring nature of that scene, right? And it's almost like in the Buddha's samadhi, right? The Buddha's concentration. He's silent, but you can feel like his blessing power there. And then the next paragraph, we'll pause maybe after each paragraph. So then it says, also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So first of all, right, you have the scene, right? So the Buddha is in meditative concentration, and then up to this point, Avalokiteshvara is also in meditative concentration. And what's Avalokiteshvara meditating on? Emptiness. Actually, we could just briefly, we won't meditate yet on emptiness, but we can briefly remember it where it says that line that said, he was meditating, Avalokiteshvara was meditating, and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So the also, as Dalai Lama mentions, means that he was meditating on the emptiness of the self. The five aggregates are empty of an inherently existent person, but also, and it also means, the word also implies that also that he recognized that the aggregates themselves are empty of inherent nature. Right? So the self is empty of inherent nature, like the self of person, but then also the self of phenomena, right? That the form, feeling, discrimination, and so on, consciousness, and all the aggregates are themselves empty of inherent nature. then the sutra, the next paragraph says, then through the power of the Buddha, the venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? And actually, if you just pause there, right, you could actually reflect, like, wow, like, can you feel, actually, if you really think about that, the profundity of his question, first of all, and the great benefit of asking a question? Like, sometimes we forget that, but actually, Yume Kensrimshi sometimes says this point. He says, asking sincere, genuine, practice question like that is part of the practice of Prajnaparamita, right? Because nobody will ever realize the Prajnaparamita unless they ask questions. And so there's something profound and compassionate about asking a genuine question. And here, in part, Shariputra is, it's through the blessing power of the Buddha that he asked that question, right? Because it will benefit beings. And also it implies that, right, Shariputra was open to the blessing power of the Buddha, right? Because he had faith in the Buddha, because he was connected to the Buddha. And so he was able to benefit beings by asking this profound, deepest of all questions in a way. All right, so then we'll do now the next paragraph is Avalokiteshvara's brief summary answer. Then he goes into a detailed answer. And remember, this is all in the category, right? The way we categorize the sutra this is the beginning of his answer for disciples of dull faculties. Right? The mantra is the response for disciples of sharp faculty. So here he's going to give this general brief overview. So it says, the sutra says, he said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So let's just contemplate that brief answer for a few minutes. So first, I'll just say one brief comment, which just to contemplate, where it says son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage, right? That lineage is compassion. This lineage means bodhisattva. Yeah. So as we give rise to bodhicitta, as we give rise to great compassion, right, we enter that lineage. So, you yourself become a son or a daughter of the lineage when you give rise to great compassion, bodhicitta, which we can do. And then let's meditate a little bit now on this, the last part of that paragraph, right, where he says, should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So let's just meditate on the emptiness. The aggregates themselves are empty of inherent nature, but let's start with the meditation now on the emptiness of person, of yourself. And so if you want to meditate on the emptiness of inherent nature of yourself, first you have to notice how an inherently existent self appears to you. Right? That's the object of negation. So look, for yourself now at how you appear, how the sense of self appears. Where do you feel it in your body? How does it appear to you? Mhm. Like if you're already familiar with finding that object of negation, then you can just see it, you know. But if you're not as familiar, right, then there's an instruction, the oral instruction, right, that to imagine, uh, in order to get it to appear more vividly, right? I mean, it's always appearing actually, all the time. That I that seems to be inherently existent appears to you. Whenever the aggregates appear to you, the I appears. You grasp it, an I existing there. But if it's hard to recognize that, then they say, imagine some extreme circumstance, right? So you can imagine being accused of something, or imagine some injustice that upsets you, or imagine being hurt or upset, upset, agitated, or imagine being threatened, right? And then the I appears more concretely, more vividly in your body and mind. A very kind of concrete feeling arises. And so that's just a tool, right, to start to become more aware. Because sometimes it appears more subtly, other times it appears very grossly, very solidly. Actually, it's true, isn't it? That sense of inherently, you said, it's always there, right? But if right now, suddenly somebody threw a rock through the window of your house in the room you're sitting in, then that the fear or anger or whatever would have come very strongly, right? So that I would suddenly appear more vividly to you. Either if you felt afraid or you felt angry, you felt upset, then that inherently is the I, which is already there, would suddenly appear much more vividly, you could say. But it's there either way. That's the object of negation. It seems to exist right there, from its own side. It doesn't seem like it's something just made up, right? It doesn't seem like just a label, just a concept. It seems like, no, it's me. It's my house. I'm right here. And so once you've recognized in your own, like they call it, innate experience, right? It's not just intellectualized, but how you actually live each moment of your life, right? Is with that I. No, let's just do that one standard meditation, right? So keep holding on to that I and now analyze, right? If that I exists, it must exist either as one with the aggregates or different from the aggregates. There's no other way for it to exist. It's got to either be one with them or something separate from them. And so actually, maybe this time I'll be silent now for 10 minutes and you check. Right? So analyze, is it one with the aggregates or is it different from the aggregates? And do your own analysis. And if you come to a place of recognizing that it doesn't, that it's neither, then just dwell in that emptiness. But if you lose that sense of emptiness, then just analyze, right? Is it one with the aggregates? Is it different from the aggregates? Take 10 minutes for that. Okay, it's 10 minutes. That. So then we'll keep. Well, we're going to keep meditating. So we'll just do the next paragraph now. So this one we meditated on part of it last time. It says, "Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty." So let's pause there, and we'll just meditate this time a little more briefly, longer later. But here I want to let's just contemplate a little bit on the latter 2 points of those four, right? So that how you know each of the aggregates, in this case form, but it says the other four aggregates also, right, is emptiness. So they're one entity. Right? In other words, emptiness is not some other entity; it's the nature. Right? So take your body, and so just we can so let's just meditate like that for a moment. You can take your body or your consciousness, either one, actually. And so you recognize, like we just meditated on how the I, right, the self of person, is empty. Here, this is referring specifically now to how the aggregates themselves are empty. That their nature is emptiness. Right? It's not some separate thing from them. Right? The nature of your body is emptiness. The nature of your consciousness is emptiness. And then how emptiness uh, takes the aspect of the body. Emptiness takes the aspect of consciousness. Emptiness, we say, appears as body. Emptiness appears as comes as a mere appearance of a body, a mere appearance of consciousness. So let's just contemplate for a few minutes on that. Right? So, and what's important, I think, in this one is to remember. So, like, we'll use the body, but you could use consciousness just as easily. The body, when it appears to us, again, the object of negation appears. Right? It appears to be inherent and have inherent nature. So when you like, that's quite easy. Again, whenever the body, just like earlier, whenever your body appears to you, it appears to have inherent nature. But then, like with the body, if you want to have that appear more vividly, right? So, like, that's quite, for me, I know if I imagine, like, if I went to the doctor and they suddenly said, "Oh, you have to have a surgery," right? Then suddenly, like, that already inherently existing appearance of my body, it would appear much more vividly, right? Where the body would appear like this even more vividly as this kind of inherently existent out of the fear, I think, or worry or something. So we grasp at this inherently existent body. But there's nothing, actually, that doesn't exist at all. So that's the emptiness. Right? That inherently existent body. We did this before, but if you search, right, if you go down, you know, is is one of the cells that body? The cells themselves are made up of molecules, molecules of atoms, atoms of subatomic particles. And those subatomic particles themselves are unfindable. We can see, like, an inherently existent body doesn't exist at all. Actually, there's nothing. It's just made up, which is false. So the body's empty of that. That's where form is emptiness. And then that emptiness itself, right? Through dependent origination, through interdependence. So within the sphere of emptiness, due to many interdependent factors, a mere appearance arises. Of like, let's say, color, of shape, of texture. And that mere appearance is merely labeled body. So the body, your body, is empty of being an inherently existent body. The very nature of the body is that it's empty of being a body. And because of that emptiness, within the sphere of that emptiness, to the interdependent factors is the mere appearance, merely labeled by the conceptual mind. There's not a single atom existing inherent intrinsically from its own side. It's just the mere appearance and the label. So you can see they're one entity. Right? Emptiness is not other than form. Emptiness doesn't exist somewhere. Emptiness is not separate from your body. It's the nature of your body. Form is not other than emptiness. So here when it says form, it's good to think of your own body. It's not other than emptiness. It's a dependent arising, so it's empty. It's empty, so it's a mere dependent arising. And if you stay with that, you may notice how you grasp, how we grasp at a body as though it's something more than emptiness. And again, that's the object of negation. Notice like we grasp at something that exists as more than a mere appearance, merely labeled by the mind. It feels to us as if there's something more there. That's the object of negation. And again, if you search the body, you search all the atoms and the parts of the nucleus of an atom, the electrons, and so on, right? That doesn't exist, that thing that seems to be more than what's merely labeled by the mind, more than a mere appearance. It's a complete hallucination, totally empty, totally non-existent, that. But emptiness is form. It means the body does exist, but how does it exist? As a mere appearance due to many factors, right? Then merely labeled by the conceptual mind, body. Without a single cell of true existence. Your body is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than your body. Right there where you grasp at like the body existing from its own side, that's right there is emptiness. Emptiness. There's no that object doesn't exist. Again, the body exists. How? As mere dependent arising. A mere appearance. The conceptual mind, merely labeled. My body is empty. Emptiness is my body. Emptiness is not other than my body, and my body is not other than emptiness. And if you meditate on that, you may find yourself starting to grasp. Right? Well, you start to realize that's true. Right? But then on some subtle level, you may grasp it, consciousness then, thinking, okay, the body's empty, but consciousness is intrinsically existing. But it says here, consciousness is empty. Emptiness is consciousness. Emptiness is not other than consciousness. Consciousness is not other than emptiness. If you break down consciousness into its moments, and then parts of moments, then parts of the parts of moments, as you grasp at a consciousness as though it existed from its own side. But there is no consciousness like that. It's empty. Because consciousness is empty, is the mere appearance of awareness. That's merely labeled consciousness. There's no truly existing awareness. Awareness is emptiness. Emptiness takes on the aspect of awareness. The truly existent, inherently existent awareness doesn't exist at all. But awareness exists, but how does it exist? As a mere appearance, merely labeled by the mind, due to interdependent factors, a mere dependent origination, totally empty from its own side. Mm. So to continue this meditation, I'm actually going to read the next two paragraphs together, and then we'll continue to meditate. So it says, Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. So here I just wanted to pause. And again, we can just meditate a bit, but the idea being just to approximate, right? So as you meditate, as we've been doing on emptiness, just to try to give yourself more of that experience of that when you negate the object of negation, right? Like say, so the truly existing person, or the truly existent body, or the truly existing consciousness, that you allow your mind to just totally absorb within that mere negation, right? With no appearances, no appearance of anything other than emptiness. So no appearance of form, feeling, discrimination, no appearance of eyes or ears or nose, no sight, no sounds, no smell, no taste, right? Like, so it's a mere emptiness. So we'll just take a few minutes just to meditate in that way, right? To let the mind absorb in that mere negation, the mere emptiness. As you meditate on the lack of true existence of consciousness, for example, then there's just the emptiness, no other appearance. No appearance of a subject or an object. No duality. And so also just a couple more minutes on this. And remember also that if the dualistic appearance arises, then it's simple. That's just the object of negation, right? Reasserting itself out of your habituation. So then again, you analyze. So if it feels like, oh, there's a real I meditating on emptiness, then that real I is again the object of negation. In reality, it's unborn, unarisen. I'll read the next bit. It says, Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly and completely awakens the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance upon the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as the truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. And so now this is, right, the mantra is the Avalokiteshvara's answer for disciples of sharp faculty. That's fun. But and so maybe what we can do is, I just thought it'd be nice, like maybe so maybe just 21 times we can recite together the mantra of the perfection of wisdom. And as we recite it, right, we can just meditate on the meaning. Right? So the meaning, in one hand, is that, we said that, right? Then one way of interpreting it is that it teaches the five paths, right? Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi. But as we just said, also the five paths, right? The path is also empty, right? Ultimately, so the path exists as a mere appearance to dependent arising, but ultimately, right? There's no There's no truly existent path. So the path is empty. Emptiness appears, manifests as the path. So we can meditate on that as we just recite that 21 times. Taya ta om gate gate para gate para sam gate bodhi so. Taya ta om gate gate para gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. Taya ta om gate gate para sam gate bodhi swaha. It says Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Aryavalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Aryavalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. And so again, we'll just pause for a moment and just imagine that scene, right? So after Avalokiteshvara has finished speaking, has recited the mantra, right? Then you imagine that the Buddha, right, shows the aspect of arising from his samadhi, his concentration, and says those words, right? And you can imagine that, the scene, right, where the gods and humans and asuras are anti-gods and Gandharvas, there's like centiators, right? So it's like all these celestial beings and they're all blissed out, right, rejoicing in the presence of the Buddha. You can imagine this kind of very magnificent scene. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to just make sure to say two things before we conclude, and then we'll rejoice and dedicate. But two things I want to say. One is, I want to go back and just emphasize a certain point, since this is, sort of concluding this class, and it's the very in Avalokiteshvara's like brief summary answer. He says, right, any son or daughter of lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the perfectionism, he says, should look upon it like this, and then he says, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates as empty, also an empty inherent nature. I wanted to say, so I wanted to say, so this thing of correctly and repeatedly, I think is like, I just want to conclude kind of main class with that. Is so first of all, the repeatedly, right? In other words, how we, come to realize emptiness, Avalokiteshvara is saying here, is through correctly and repeatedly meditating. Right? So if it's unfamiliar, then of course, we're not going to cognize it very well yet. So it takes repeated practice, right? And each time we meditate on emptiness, we're getting closer. Right? It's like we're wearing away at the veil or whatever between us and being able to perceive the nature of things. So it just takes repetition. Right? Everything arises due to causes and conditions. So the main cause, the biggest cause for realizing emptiness, there are various causes, but the main one is repeatedly meditating. So that's the repeatedly part, right? That we have to just again and again give rise to this meditation, meditating on the emptiness of the person, of form, of feeling, of compositional factors, of discrimination, of consciousness, and so on. And just, suffering of, whatever's arising, we can meditate on the emptiness of it. And when we grasp at something as inherent existent, then we can meditate on the emptiness of that. So that's the repeatedly. And then the correctly, that word correctly, that means always coming back to dependent origination, right? To dependent arising. That, if our meditation is correct, because Avalokiteshvara says correctly, right? So if our meditation is correct, that means that we're understanding dependent arising. And if your study of emptiness or your meditation emptiness starts to drift away from seeing how things are dependent and how they do appear, how karma functions, then we're not understanding correctly. Does that make sense? So, whereas when we understand emptiness, where he says correctly, that means, right? It means on the one hand that it's a negation of inherent existence, but if it's correct, then you understand that things appear and arise due to causal factors. And therefore, so if we're understanding emptiness correctly, then actually our concern with ethics and with compassion, with love, and with karma actually becomes more precise. Whereas if somebody starts to meditate on emptiness and thinks, oh, therefore, karma doesn't matter, then we'll misunderstand it. It's not correct. So that's a guideline, is what they point out. Right? So dependent arising is, Kenshin is a synonym for emptiness. He says that. He says, so dependent arising is the meaning of emptiness. Emptiness has the meaning of, they have the same meaning, right? Dependent. And he points that out, actually the commentary pointed that out. I just remind you guys one last time about that point, right? Because the commentary says, right, dependent cuts off independent existence, right? So dependent means empty, right? But then arising, going back to that line, form is empty, and form is empty, emptiness is form, right? So when we say dependent, it cuts off inherent nature, right? Anything that's dependent has no inherent nature, so it's empty. But then arising means the same thing as emptiness is form. It means, but due to those dependent factors, there's an appearance, right? And part of that appearance, then the mind labels, right? And that's how things exist. So dependent arising implies both the emptiness side through the word dependence, which cuts off true existence, say, and then the arising part cuts off nihilism. Actually, it says things still appear, they still manifest, right, due to those dependent factors. So anyway, that's the path of correctly. But anyway, we only have 2 minutes. So I just wanted to say, we should do two things. One is, so we just spent quite a few classes studying, contemplating, meditating on the Heart Sutra. So let's take a moment to rejoice, that actually it really is wonderful, isn't it? Like to meditate, just to try, right? To try to understand emptiness. And any effort in that direction is meaningful effort, because it's the main method to cut off suffering of ourselves and all sentient beings. Right? And in this time period in particular, right, during a pandemic, there are a lot of other things, right? Sometimes actually isn't it true? Many people spend time actually it's true, especially like you contemplate it. It's actually funny, right? Many people actually are, spending time cultivating anger, cultivating division, cultivating hatred, cultivating, and so what a relief, actually, right? To spend time cultivating wisdom. Like the world needs people who spend their time cultivating wisdom. So thank goodness, actually, we've done that. How wonderful, right? Like, to whatever, whether we've done our best, let's put it that way. And so to do your best, striving to cultivate wisdom, like there's nothing better actually than trying to do that. We ourselves need wisdom. The world needs people who cultivate wisdom. Everybody needs people who cultivate wisdom. The method of becoming a Buddha is through the cultivation of wisdom, through exploring, through inquiring into wisdom. So how wonderful, we can rejoice in our own and each other's efforts. In this way, actually, we're doing our best to live a meaningful. And then we can do the verses of dedication. The supreme jewel bodhicitta, where it has not arisen, may it arise and grow. Where it has arisen, may it not decrease, but increase more and more. In the snowy mountain paradise, you the source of good and happiness, all-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And finally, just, may each of us and all sentient beings, through this merit, realize, the meaning of the Prajnaparamita. Whatever realizations of that, Avalokiteshvara and Shakyamuni Buddha had, may all of us and all sentient beings also have those same experiences and realizations of the 5 paths, the 10 bhumis, and the resultant state of Buddha. Thanks, everybody, for making this effort together.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Wilhelmina. Good to hear you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
What's
Thank you.
the
Thank
tennis
you, Lauren.
class? When is that starting?
What's that? I couldn't hear you, Cynthia.
The next set of classes. When
Oh,
is
so
that
it'll start
starting next year?
Yeah, so it'll start in January. I'll send today. I'll send this week I'll send Gabe a list of some of the first few classes. But yeah, it'll be not January 2nd, so sometime after the 2nd of January. I'm not sure if it'll be the 9th or the 16th will be the first class. I'll send that today. Probably today or tomorrow. I'll send it. Yeah, and I'll try to copy. I'll copy. If I have your emails, I'll copy you when I send that. If I don't, some people I don't have your emails, but if I have it, I'll copy you when I send it to Gabe. But if I don't, he'll post it, I'm sure, quickly. Gabe's good at that.
Okay.
Thanks, Gabe.
Then happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah, happy holidays, everybody.
And you, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, my email's up there if you need it.